So there's gonna be two different response types for user, and I'm I'm thinking that we should look into the Postman collection to see how strict this is, because I want to get away with being able to send it back the same user, rather than having a different response type. So let's see. Test user has property. So this is what auth. Raw. Making sure that everything has stuff. Current user has all these and update. Let's see. Profiles. Okay, so that's some good news. We are able to send back the same thing because it's checking if it has the thing. It's not checking if it doesn't have the property. So that makes things a little easier for us. So on that note, we're gonna create a data model or data entity today. So I'm gonna create a entities folder. So make directory source entities, and then we're gonna make a user entities. User.entity.ts. So this is gonna be a little weird because I know that in the past, whenever I made a NestJS project, I always had the entity inside of the module that it's referencing, but it gets a little weird because most entities are used in more than one module, and it's also irrelevant to import modules when all you need is just the data. So it could lead into like circular dependencies, unnecessary circular dependencies. And so I think it'd just be cleaner to separate the data from the actual controllers, which, I mean, going back to MVC, that's the whole point. But in implementation, this is how we're going to architect it. Anyways, enough rambling. Let's actually write some stuff. Do I need anything specific? We're creating a user, so it would be a good idea to install bcrypt. So I'm gonna do that. Yard add bcrypt.js. And for those of you who don't know, bcrypt is just a password hashing library. It's written in JavaScript, so we also need to add as a dev dependency the types for it. The types bcrypt.js. And this is just going to be able to, for us to store passwords as a hash instead of plain text. And I think I'm also going to create a abstract entity. So touch source entities abstract entity.ts. Important to note, I'm not adding the suffix of .entity because I don't actually want Typeform to pick this up and create a table in Postgres for it. And what the abstract entity is, it's just going to be a class that we can use to inherit from that has all of the columns that we want on all of our other tables, so we don't have to rewrite it, such as created date, updated date. I would say ID, however, I do know that this wants a incremented ID, and I feel safer. Oh yeah, incremented ID for comments, and I just feel safer when there's a UUID on everything. However, I guess it wouldn't hurt. So we're gonna do abstract abstract class, abstract entity extends base entity. And the base entity comes from typeform. So we should probably, yep. And that'll give us all the functionality of the repository functionality. So find, create, update. So I'm gonna do primary generated column, and this is just gonna be an ID of int, right, number. Oh, JavaScript. And then we want a created date column, created dates. This is gonna be a dates, and a updated date column. Updated. All right. So all of our data is gonna have these properties, and our user entity is gonna be using that. So export class user entity extends abstract entity. And we could also add the decorator here of entity, which we don't want on our abstract entity just because it's not in the actual table. Do I want to give this table a name? Yeah. So by convention, I like to have my database columns or tables plural. So it's going to be users, even though it's going to be referring to one singular user. I don't know, that's just preference. Anyways, so we have a couple columns that we want, which I forgot. So let's go look those up. Let's see. Where's the user? So email, username, bio, image. Email, string, username, string, bio, string, image, string, or null. The image is going to be null because by default it wants us to return null, so that's totally fine. Well, we're going to have following, but I'm going to just add it as a to-do because that requires us to implement the following feature. And let's make sure that we add the appropriate column types. So that's, and column here, and bio, I want it to be default of nothing. And column here. And for image, I want the default to be null. And I also want it to be nullable. So it's going to be able to be null in the database. Let's also add some class validator and class transformer stuff. So import from class transformer and import from class validator, because we want email to be is email. And what else do we want? Oh, we also need a password. Password, it's gonna be string. Column is gonna be, no, I think that's fine. Oh, we also want to exclude this. Because we want, when we send the user back, we never want to send the password. Even though it's hashed in the database, it's not safe to give it back. And it's also not comfortable for the user to see their password returned. Okay, there is one last thing that we want to add in, and it's a method called before insert. And this is where we're gonna use bcrypt, which I have to import like this. So as bcrypt from bcrypt.js, and this is where we're gonna hash the password. So it's gonna be an async function, and I'm just gonna call it hash password. These method names don't matter. It's just clean for you to know what you're dealing with. I'm gonna do this dot password is equal to awaits bcrypt dot hash, and we're sending in this dot password. And finally, it takes in a salt of a number, and I'm gonna do 10, just cause. And then finally, we need to do a toJSON. This method actually matters because toJSON is gonna be read from the class transformer, and that's where it's gonna be excluding the password. So we're gonna return class to plain this. So I think that's good so far. And let's add this to our service. So I'm gonna close all these files. Oh, it's a good thing we ended up on modules. So we need to do imports of typeform module for feature of user entity, and this will allow this module to have access to the user entity, so that we could use it, I guess. And then service, instead of this mock user, we can get rid of this, and we're gonna have a lot of errors. But we need to inject the ability to access the user entity here. So I'm going to do inject repository of user entity, and I'm going to call it a user repo, which is a repository of user entity. Save. So now I can get rid of this and this whole thing. So for register and login, it's basically just going to be a couple of CRUD operations. Registration, we're going to do a create. All right, both of these methods are going to be async methods. So I'm going to do async and add the normal async try catch boilerplate error. And what do I want to do? And if there's an error, I'm going to do throw new internal server error. And the same here, try catch error, throw new internal server error, save, and there's our boilerplate. So in our register, we're just gonna have a little bit of a naive approach. We just do const user equals to user repo dot create with credentials, and then return user. Oh, we also need to save that user to the database. So user dot save, and I believe this gives us a promise, so we should wait for it. So awaits. Does this give us a promise? No? Okay. So that'll do. And then for login is gonna be a little different. So we're gonna do a find here. So const user equals to this dot user repo dot find. And what are we finding on? We're gonna use the constraint of username, right? No, login they send in the email, right? Yeah, login is email. So email is credentials.email. We can make this a little cleaner by just doing some destruction here. And we just take the email from this. No, we want the whole thing, don't we? Well, I can do email password. So after we do the find, we're gonna find 1. And this is an await. And yeah, that's correct. So now we're gonna check the password. So we'll do if user dot password. Oh no. If the user exists and user dot compare password, which we need to define because I haven't done that yet. The credentials password. Then we'll be able to return the user. Otherwise, we'll throw an error of unauthorized. And we can also send a little message, invalid credentials. And let's get rid of this unused variable and open up the user entity. So we need another bcrypt method, and this is going to be a compare password, which takes in the attempted password. And I believe that's just going to be a string. So, what did that look like? Oh, okay, this is very simple. So we'll just return await bcrypt dot compare the attempt to this dot password. And of course, this is a async method. So that should work, and that should also work. Oh, and there's also one last thing I want to do. So the username, I want it to be unique, so that there's only one username in the, each username in the database is going to be unique, and that also allows us to have a more interesting error. And this I have to look up because I remember it somewhere. So we do if error.code is equal to 23505. That means there's a conflict. And we can do throw new conflict exception. Username has already been taken. And that's actually useful information for the user, so they don't try to keep sending in the same credentials. Alright, so this is the basics of it. Let's now test it in Postman, which means we need to start the server, and you're going to see a lot of typeborn logs as it creates the user entity for the first time. Yep, look at all that stuff. Alright, to Postman now. So if we go to login, we should get a bad request because of our validation. But if we add in the password, we should get a different error this time. And that should be internal server error. Is that right? Yep, that is right. Okay. I don't know if that's the appropriate one, but that's fine for now. And let's I don't like Jake. That's fine. Let's do username is going to be Jake. And we'll send that in. And Jake comes back with what we expect it to be. With the ID of 1, of course. And now we can log in as Jake. And there's Jake. And if we send in the wrong password with like password 1, we should get unauthorized. That's not right. Send. Okay. Attempt this dot password. Compare password. Is it promise? Do we need to await this? Let's try that again. Send. There we go. What? Let's log out that value. So, boop. Oops, that's not where I want it. And const is valid equals to is valid. So it is false. So why are we going outside of this? What about the user? Boop. And there's our password. Everything looks correct. Let's you know what? Let's do a early return. So if there. So if it's not valid, we'll throw the error early, and then if everything goes right, we should return. And I'm okay with not checking for the user here, because trying to call compare password on something that's undefined should throw us the internal server error. So why do we still get the 500? Oh. Okay. I know what's going on. We're throwing the error, but whenever we catch all errors, it comes out as an internal server error. Okay. That makes sense. Yeah. So in that case, I'm just gonna do unauthorized here. Credentials. And we'll just do new error. Actually, that's fine. So if we do send, there it is. Unauthorized invalid credentials. Okay, so I'm okay with that. So anyways, that's basically the data model or the data entity hooking up to our controller. In the next video, we're actually going to start doing real authentication, so that all of our other modules has access to the correct user and ownership and all of that. So, yeah. See you guys next time.